God was working behind the scenes. First of all, he had his captives in Babylon. Then he allowed the king to have this dream. He allowed the king to forget it. He allowed the impotence of the wise men of his day to be shown in the fact that they couldn't tell the dream, although that's what they were being paid to do. Even on pain of death, they could not recall what the king's dream was. So the death decree then included Daniel and his friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So when he learned about the king's dream, he asked for this time. And he said, King, we need a little time to pray about this. Having been granted his request, what did Daniel do? Daniel held a prayer meeting. He called.
My Lord, what courage! What courage!
He called his friends together, and he asked that he made known to them what the king's perplexities were concerning the secret. So as they went to the only source that they knew they could get an answer from, they prayed to the God of heaven. And what did God do? God honored these young men who were faithfully trying to serve him in a foreign land where they were not allowed to live as they would choose to live, but had to sneak and eat the kind of foods that made them wise enough to be in touch with God. You see, they at an early age had established a relationship with God. These are young men that lived, one of them, Daniel, lived throughout the entire process of this great king. And the Babylonian period was such a fleeting thing that its greatest prosperity was within the limits of one young man. He started out as a youth, lived and honored the king and served the king until he was over 90 years old.
Now, are you saying that Daniel prayed that God would give him the interpretation of this king's dream? Daniel realized the significance of that dream, and he must have known somehow that that dream had something to do with the plan of God, because he was faithful. And you know, it said Daniel prayed 3 times a day. So that meant he had a prayer life built up where he had the confidence that God would reveal anything to him.
That's right.
That God would deliver him from anything and reveal anything to him. And God gave him the interpretation. But when he received the interpretation of the dream, and it was telling of the destruction of the kingdom of Nebuchadnezzar, didn't he have some fear to go to this mighty king and tell him that his kingdom was going to be destroyed?
Well, first of all, Daniel had confidence in God.
Oh.
He had established a communion with God, an experience, I should say, with God, that when God revealed after his prayer meeting what this king's dream was, he didn't even go and compare notes with the king. He had the man Azariah, who was over them, said, go tell the king I've got his answer. He had confidence that what God had revealed to him is what the king had dreamed. And I can just see that old king sitting on the edge of his seat, waiting as this young man revealed to him what it was that God had told him. And Daniel blessed and praised God. He was so sure that what God had told him was the exact thing he needed to know. And yes, he went in before that king. He told the king exactly what the king had asked. He said that God changes the times and the seasons. He removeth kings and sets up kings. Now that king didn't want to hear that. He said he gives wisdom unto the wise. He gives knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in darkness, and light dwelleth in him. That is a testimony for a young man. And we read that in Daniel, the 2nd chapter, verses 21 and 22.
And you know, how must these other wise men have felt? These were wise men, older men, and here this young man is coming in saying that he knows the interpretation. But I imagine these wise men were hanging on everything because they knew that they only had one hope. And that was that Daniel had the answer. They had to look to a man of God out of all their wisdom and all their knowledge and all their claiming that they could do something. They had to bow down and acknowledge that this man of God, this young man of God, knew more than they did, was wiser in their own practices than they were.
But they had already acknowledged that when they said that this could not come from anyone who was here on earth. They recognized that there had to be a higher power, and the gods that they were serving were not those higher powers. I imagine these old men felt relieved. Number one, Daniel asked as he went in before the king that they not destroy the wise men of Babylon. He asked that their lives be spared. So I'm feeling that according to Daniel 22, 24, and 25, that as he asked for these old men not to be destroyed, that they should have been relieved. But as we'll find out in a later chapter, they were jealous of what this young man could do.
My Lord.
Isn't
that true today?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that true today?
Number one, this young man was not dependent upon himself, and he never ever took the credit. When he went to the king, he said, there is a God in heaven that gives this interpretation of the dream. King, I'm going to tell you about the dream. And this young man stood in the king's presence, and he began to tell him clearly what it was that he had dreamed. But he let him know, this is not because I'm better than anybody else, but because the God of heaven wishes to reveal himself to you. Number one, this king was a man that looked to the future. And Daniel told him that while you were sleeping, you were wondering what was coming on to the world. You were thinking about the future. And God is answering what you really want to know. So he began to tell him about this great image. He said, I know what you saw. That you saw a great image stand before you. And he began to list the various elements of this image. And we read in Daniel 2:32 and 33, he said, you saw an image with a head of gold. And then the arms and the breasts were of silver. The thighs and the belly were of brass. And the legs were of iron. And the feet were of iron and clay. Now, while you were still watching that image, a stone was cut out without hands, and it smote the image on its feet. And that stone became a great mountain, and it filled up the whole earth. By then, Nebuchadnezzar, was...
Well, I imagine by him, Daniel telling him that he saw this idol. Nebuchadnezzar worshipped idols. And so no wonder this dream had such significance for him.
Right.
No wonder he was troubled and wanted to know the meaning of it, because he dreamed of this great idol, and it was mixed with different kind of metals and things. And surely he was dazzled by this because he worshipped idols, and surely he thought, what is this great? He thought perhaps it was something great for him.
Okay, let's look at it. God got his attention by what he showed him. God got his attention. Now remember, he had forgotten it. But as Daniel began to bring it back to him, he began to believe, yes, this young man has something to show me. Now, who now gives interpretation of the dream to Nebuchadnezzar? Daniel, through God. It says, the great God hath made known to the king what shall come to pass. And then Daniel says this, the dream is certain, the interpretation is sure.
Is sure. Praise
Daniel
the Lord.
really believed in God. Daniel could only give the interpretation that the God of heaven had revealed to him. In this night vision, we don't know if it was a dream or a night vision, but Daniel was able to interpret everything that he saw, that the king had seen in his dream. And what does the head of gold represent? He began to tell him, I'm going to give you an interpretation of this dream now. He said, Nebuchadnezzar, you are a great king. That head of gold represents